and welcome to the Gotham Outsiders. Welcome back to our exciting conclusion of DC Pride 2021 celebration, part 2, trying to snap a selfie with Midnighter. I'm your host, Bat Obsessive Chris, and trying to catch Constantine's eye, my co-host TJ.
Oh, hello everyone. I am your Chris proclaimed Batman acolyte, and I might get lucky with John Constantine today.
You very well might. But we are not alone. As with last time, we have a panel of amazing creators from DC Pride #1. Creators, will you please introduce yourselves? Let us know your names and pronouns.
Hi, I'm Ariana Maher, she, her. I'm a letterer for the new Crush and Lobos series, as well as the DC Pride stories. Try the Girl with Vida Ayala, Skylar Partridge, and Jose Villarrubia, and then also Another Word for a Truck to Move Your Furniture with Mariko Tamaki, Amy Reeder, and Marissa Louise. And yeah, I'm a letterer.
Hi, I'm Enrica Eren Angiolini. I am a colorist, and I colored 2 short stories in the DC Pride anthology. I worked on the the clothes, makeup, gift story with Danny Lore, Lisa Sterl, and Becca Carey, and on the date night one with Nicole Maines, Rachel Stott, and Steve Wans.
Well, my name is Luciano Vecchio, he, him, and I did the art for the Love Life story featuring Aqualad and the JLQ, written by Andrew Wheeler.
And I'm Steve Orlando, also he, him. And in DC Pride, I did By the Victors, which is features Midnighter, Constantine, and Gregorio de la Vega, FKA Extraño. And I've been all over otherwise. Wonder Woman, Midnighter and Apollo, Justice League of America. I've been around at DC, and we're just cracking into Marvel. So you've probably seen my name somewhere.
Chris is a big fan.
Yeah, I was trying to decide if I was going to say right now, Midnighter has been one of my favorite characters for ages. I talk about him on the show all the time, and your run specifically.
Well, thank you. I mean, I swore off it just because I wanted to give other people, a chance to step in the ring and say something with him. And then they came back to me with this short, and the challenge was making something that could involve Constantine, Gregorio, and Midnighter. So I was like, okay, I will come back for this. In general, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of that book, and weirdly, like, it's been almost 10 years now. So I am excited to see like the new stuff that's going on with Michael and Becky. And I want to boost new voices with him, but every once in a while the email comes and you got to come back and say something fun with him, like happened in this book. So,
and I'm happy that you did.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. You all did fantastic work on this book. It meant a lot to me and to Chris, and we are excited to celebrate with you. To start off, we have a warm-up question. In your opinion, who is the best Bat detective out of the Bat family?
Tim Drake, no question.
Yeah.
We have a Tim Drake agenda on the show, and everyone who comes on agrees. So.
I mean, is it a trick question? Because I thought there was only one answer to that.
This is a hot question on our show, and there are many opinions in our listenership. So.
Many incorrect opinions in our listenership. Well, now that you passed the test that you didn't know you were taking, tell us a little bit about the stories that you worked on for the collection.
For the stories I worked on, it was pretty exciting because Try the Girl with Vida Ayala, like when I was told I would be on that team, I was really excited because even though I hadn't worked with the rest of the team, I've worked with Vida before. They were they worked with Danny on James Bond back in the day, and we had also done Xena. So I was familiar with their scripts, and I love how they play out a story. So it was really fun to just jump in to like a comfortable pair of shoes kind of thing. It's like, oh, I know how they do their thing. So that was fun. With the Harley Quinn story, that was especially fun for me because as much as I love the question, I've really been on a kick with Harley Quinn from watching the animated series recently. It was really exciting. Getting to see season 2 was really exciting. And coming back and actually lettering Harley Quinn's story was a first for me. And getting to do it as a story for Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn was like that. I could not dream of a better story to get to letter for the first time.
You know, as I had alluded to, I've done a lot with Midnighter. So the allure for me with this was to A, contrast them with some new people, and B, to try to say something new, you know, like not to make myself sound like the old man of queer comics, but I've been around. So the challenge for me is always, you know, what can we say that at least to my understanding, hasn't been said before, you know? And so with this story, yes, I wanted to spotlight Gregorio because he is the first out character in a Big Two comic. You know, North Star debuted first, but came out second. And I wanted to focus on him, and I wanted to tackle something new for Pride with that Midnighter violent flair. So that's how we came to the story about, you know, basically, you know, magical straight washing, and of course punching it in the face, as he's wont to do. But that was a topic, you know, straight washing is a topic that I hadn't seen tackled in a Big Two comic before. And it's funny, everybody says, oh, you can actually, it's such a read of my fans. I love you all and comic readers in general. But they were like, oh, is this about Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, how they were made cousins in the American version of Sailor Moon? And the funny thing is, if you want to know about me, it was actually about Troy and my anger that Achilles and Patroclus in that movie were cousins and not lovers. So perhaps you're seeing my influences versus the mainstream. But either way, you know, it was a chance to take this character that is a hammer. You know, like Midnighter is someone who, when you see a problem for anybody, but in this case, the queer community, he will offer the most violent and most succinct solution. And there's a big catharsis in that. So especially with, you know, the struggles we're facing now, why not? Yeah, I mean, why not go full comics and have him fighting a straight washing Nazi vampire and then punching his face off? You know, I do know what people want from an Orlando story. And for better or worse, it's not hugs, it's gay violence. And so that's what I'm here for.
It must have been especially satisfying that more often now people have forgotten Troy, but they remember the new Hades game where the whole love story is a part of like accomplishing the game. So
I mean, that's my whole origin story, is just getting crumbs in the early 2000s, like seeing the back of Colin Farrell's parts in Alexander. I forgot. I don't know the rating on this podcast.
Oh, it's explicit. Go crazy.
Go for it.
Seeing the back of his sack in Alexander, and like getting out of bed with future Joker Jared Leto. That was like all we got in like 2004. So like, yes, it's just revenge on my high school years, played out in comic book form.
So for me, this was a very, very, very special thing because tomorrow, which will be June 30th, depending on when this is going live, I'm not sure. But tomorrow is the anniversary of my coming out. So I forgot to mention this at the beginning because brain is scattered everywhere. But I go by they, them. And so this was kind of a very special opportunity for me to celebrate my first year as an open member of the community, I would say.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's so exciting.
Yes, it was incredible. I've been working with DC for a few months now. I'm coloring Justice League Last Ride with Chip Zdarsky and Miguel Mendoza, and so I've been working on that for some time. I did some small stories for DC, and when I heard that the surprise was happening, I was like, this would be so cool. And I have that little voice inside my head saying, no, I should not apply because, you know, it's not good enough, you're not queer enough, or any of those things. But I thought, you know, the worst thing that can happen is just say no. So I emailed my editor, Katie Kubert from Justice League, with a very bad email title because the email was titled "Shameless Plug," and then I was like, I don't think that was the right thing. She would probably move it to spam immediately and never read it. In which I was saying, hi, I know you're doing this, and you might not know this, but I am non-binary, and if you're looking for colorists, you know, I know that sometimes people choose pencilers quite early and writers, of course, but colorists often come out later in the process. And so I said, I'll be happy to do this. And she was not working on the project, but my other editor, Michael McAllister from Justice League, was, and he quickly reached out saying, hey, yes, that would be lovely. And in the meanwhile, I had contacted Rachel Stott, who was penciling the other story, and saying, Rachel, because we worked together before and we love working together. I said, do you have a colorist for your thing? And she said, I don't know, I'll ask. So I got an email from Michael one day, and the next day I got an email from Diego Lopez, the other editor, saying, hi, do you want to do this too? And I went, yes, I will do 2 stories. And yeah, I was happy because for once I listened to my instinct of just pushing myself to do the thing, and the thing worked out. And so yeah, this is how I got there, and I'm very, very happy and proud to be surrounded by so many amazing artists and creators that I know and follow. So that's been incredible.
And also, congratulations on 1 year, by the way.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was going to say that is such a great story. Thank you for sharing it with us. I came out as genderqueer like 2 months ago, so I'm with you.
Yay!
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here, and your colors on the Flash story and the Dreamer story were very beautiful. So
Absolutely
thank you.
gorgeous.
Thank you so much. And it was like the fact that I got to work on a non-binary and a trans character is just like, oh gosh, this was the right thing. And I was incredibly happy, and I'm very, very lucky to be included in this. And thank you, DC, and everyone in there for giving me this opportunity.
Well, they are lucky to have you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I can relate to that feeling of joy of being part of such thing. Actually, Andrew and I did the Aquila story originally for the Valentine special, so we did it a while earlier than everyone else, and then in the middle of everything, they decided to put together this whole anthology, and it works out even better than I could have dreamed for. So our story focuses on Aquila going for the first time to Pride with a date, and Eclipso attacks Pride, of course, because he's like the hate of God or whatever. And we got to introduce on page the concept of the JLQ in a way. In this case, it's like a call to arms from Extraño. So there is a bunch of LGBTQ characters from DC coming together in help of Aquila, and it means so much in so many ways. On one hand, I used to draw these kind of things as fan art because for years now I've been doing these big gatherings. I love drawing hundreds of characters in one image coming together, showing strength in numbers. So being able to do it actually in canon as part of a story is a lot, and it also reflects a lot of how it felt for me. Like my very first time I went to Pride, it was a long time ago, but you know that feeling that believing you're the only one in your everyday life or whatever, and for the first time being on broad light in the street with hundreds of your peers, and understanding that for that moment at least you're not the minority anymore, like the tables have turned. At least in that moment in that street, we're living this alternate reality, and so I think that all of that is present in our story.
Well, we were Team JLQ on Twitter, if that wasn't clear, and I loved your story. Luciano, you are probably one of my favorite artists right now, so this is my fanboy moment where I say
thank you.
I love your work and thank you for being here.
I'm also going to bring this up if Luciano and I work together again, and I'm going to remind him that he said he loves crowd scenes. It's going to be the all crowd scene issue of whatever our next issue is. I'll put them. no one has ever said that before in the history of comics art. So yes, it's going to be, everything is going to be taking place at a circuit party. That's my next book.
As long as it's all superhero characters with specific, I know, I like this crowd of superheroes and being true and honest to their history and their costumes and whatever. Like, for example, Steve, you are deep cut with your references, and I was crazy with you including that character.
Oh, with Moshe.
Moshe.
Yeah, I mean, I had to do something, right? Like if I'm known for anything besides punching at DC, it's deep cut queer characters. So there he was. And I saw that was basically like, I just told Stephen Byrne, the angel that he is, to like combine the old Adam Hughes design with something Jonathan Van Ness would wear. And that's what we got. And I was really happy with that. For folks that don't know, I mean, Luciano pointed out, like, the bartender in our story was kind of like legitimately a 3-panel appearance in the Adam Hughes, JM, DeMatteis, and Giffen Justice League. And he was just like a punchline joke character. And he was wearing that outfit, and he had a dress and heels on and things. So it's me. So yes, obviously we had to make that character fun and put him back in a respectable way.
Oh, I love that.
He has the DC Wikipedia entry. It's very short, but it's out there.
That's awesome. Okay, so our next question is, what has working on this meant for you as a fan and a creator?
It meant a lot to me. Yeah. Growing up, my mom came out to me when I was pretty young. Once I started understanding concepts and stuff, and my mom wanted me to understand these things. She took me out to Pride when I was pretty young for the first time. We lived near DC, so they had a really big parade there. It was exciting understanding these things about my mom's life and getting to meet her friends and her girlfriends, and just like getting to know people and seeing how much more different perspectives were out there outside of the little neighborhood we were living in. But then in '96, because my mom's bisexual, but she's married to a man, it's my dad. And in '96, Dad got assigned to a job in Japan, which was super exciting, but it was on a military base. And this is during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So we went from having a pretty open, we didn't have to worry about a lot of these things that we ended up having to constantly worry about once we moved overseas, because our community contracted down to whatever was on base, and everything on base had to be pretty uniform. We couldn't be ourselves. And my brother and I especially, we came out later on. He came out a lot earlier than me. I had a lot of stuff to deal with before I came to really understand myself. And I think a lot of it was because I was older and I internalized a lot of stuff that growing up on base had done to me. But going from there to where we constantly had to watch our words and actions, we couldn't make a joke that, like, my mom would crack up whenever I make jokes about stuff, and I couldn't make queer jokes because if anyone overheard us, my dad could get fired, we'd get sent back to the States, we wouldn't have anything. There was a lot of risk there. And to go from there to go into comics, which my mom appreciated because she loved creativity, but she never really understood because according to her, there wasn't anything that she saw that was her. And until I finally got her a copy of Batwoman Elegy, she never really saw anyone that she understood. And then now getting to letter not just 2 stories in the DC Pride anthology, but the entire Marvel Pride anthology, both of them coming out this year for the first time, was startling and amazing. That I can give this book to my brother and I can get a copy for his husband and their family. I can get a copy for my mom and be like, hey, I helped make something with a whole bunch of other LGBT creators, and this is something special for us. That's not a place I thought I'd be when I was living on base back in the 2000. It's special.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I'll say, like, it's the exciting moment for me is, well, first of all, yeah, the existence of these books, and the fact that, when I got in 2015, it's basically me and Sina. If you wanted someone to write these books, so the exciting thing for me, like, is that we have grown. The community has grown so much within behind the scenes, I should say, within the comics community, that we can fill these books. And I'll joke about the fact that there's not enough of us to go around for people like me that are in Marvel and DC. But for the most part, that's just a joke. We have a wealth of creators. There's more and more every day, and that's the most exciting thing to me, because for better or worse, I can't tell every queer story. The three of us that were, I should say, Mark and Draco was there too, so I'm just being kind of a dick. But like, however many people were there in 2015, like, we can't tell everyone. We shouldn't be expected to tell everyone, nor do we have the experience to do that. So by numerous vectors, the answer is we need to have more folks, using their own experiences to tell these stories, and then using that as a gateway to get in and diversify any book. Like, we shouldn't only be telling or expected to only tell these exact stories, but this is often the doorway in. And now you look, I mean, both Batman books are led by queer writers right now, something that I never thought would really happen. Both main Batman books, obviously there's like 35 Batman books, but Detective and Batman are both written by queer writers. And, that stuff happens because of big benchmark books like this. That stuff happens because of books where we celebrate the queer creative community. And then these books filter out to editors across comics, and they say, oh, I never knew about this person before. Well, let's bring them into X, Y, and Z. So it's a huge behind the scenes moment that I especially really appreciate, because look, I mean, I've been in rooms when I first got into comics where I'll tell you this, like, I met David Walker and became good friends with him because the first time we ever met at a creative function, we were the only two people from marginalized communities in any way in the room. And we were like, oh, so it's us, the cultural credit team. And then we began drinking. But like, that would never happen now, because we're bolstering our numbers. And that's, having been in it for a while, that's the most exciting thing to me.
For me, it is it's so special. This moment in history, I wouldn't have dreamed of this just a few months or years ago. As I said, I started doing this as fan art a few years ago. I've been working on comics. I have been out for lots of years. I've been doing my creator-owned stuff with queer themes. But I was thinking, I started paying more attention to mainstream representation after the Love is Love anthology came out. It was in 2017 or 18. And that was the first time we saw many of the queer DC characters in the same publication. At the same time, I think many, or at least half or many of the authors were straight allies telling those stories. So it is interesting to see the progress made in so few years, and to be part of that. I felt like right away I felt the need to I don't know, I started doing fan art, and I'm trying to contribute some visibility to these characters, most very obscure, most very forgotten. And seeing the response it got, it showed the evidence of the need for these characters, these stories, and the fact that it's finally being given the space it deserves. And I hope it gets more and more space and pages and series and everything all the time, not only on Pride Month, and it is happening. We're starting to see that. So I'm just super grateful to be part of this moment.
For me, it was, I mean, of course, I mentioned before, it's a huge milestone because it's the celebration of the coming out, but it's also the fact that, so I'm from Italy, and Italy is still behind on a lot of things, and equality and LGBTQ rights and representation and all of that. So I think that it's still, there is a very strong queer community in Italy, but it's still fighting. We've had a lot of struggle recently with some very, very bad laws trying to block LGBTQ rights, and it will be a long struggle. But we're slowly moving forwards. And since COVID happened, so it's been nearly about a year now, I've been in the UK because my partner lives here, and I came here, and then COVID happened, and I've never been able to go back basically since. And so in a time in which I know that my country is also struggling a lot with all of this, the fact that this happened in this time was a nice, one of those moments in which you say, okay, come on, we even, comics that used to be such a cis white man thing, it's now visibly progressing. There's so many queer creators, and I think that the publishing industry is actually making steps forward in a way that it's not to make just money, but it's actually giving the true opportunity to queer creators to tell their stories and show their experience and bring new points of views and new ideas, new in a way, but they're not new in the queer community, but new maybe to comics and new to the audience that it's not maybe used to that. So being part of that in a time, especially after last year, which was very, very difficult for everyone, and I think it made us feel very distant because, of everything. And having this year both the DC and the Marvel titles coming out with this kind of titles, it's just wonderful. And I think it was very it just is a very warm and beautiful thing to see for me, and it just makes me feel more and more determined to do my small part with just like coloring cute, wholesome, but also badass queer content in big companies that people will see and read, and young kids and teenagers will all grow up having at least those few pages this year, and then hopefully next year it will be more pages, and then in a few years we will have tons and tons of material that people of all ages can look up to and say, okay, we've got this, we can go forward, and it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I said in our last part, maybe we'll have DC Pride 2022 celebration next year. Fingers crossed.
I really hope so. It'd be fun to see how these kind of anthologies could evolve over time instead of just being a one-off. I'd like to see what next year would bring, what kind of creators we get to see there, and the year after.
Steve and Luciano, you both collaborated on Marvel Voices Pride #1 as well. You co-created a new gay mutant, Somnus. Can you guys talk about your collaborative process and your inspirations in writing and designing this new character? And of course, we also have to shout out Ariana for also working on the issue as well. She lettered not just this story, but every story in the issue.
I mean, I'll say, as it comes to the collaboration, Luciano is a great designer. So my job there is to just get out of the way and let him do what he does best. And if anything, it just comes down to the other thing, make sure that he make sure that he has everything he needs to create something that's stunning and unique. And that comes from the character's story. So I don't remember Luciano, but I don't really think I gave you a lot of specific visual cues because you know what the hell you're doing. But I did tell you a lot about who he is, and when it comes to Somnus, for me, Well, it's like I said with DC Pride. At this point, I'm trying to offer things that haven't really been brought up before, and we did that in DC Pride with straight washing. In Marvel Pride, I wanted to tell a multi-generational story. This is something that has been really on my mind because when I moved to Boston a couple years ago, and I live around a lot of queer elders, folks in their late 60s, early 70s. And I think about, obviously there's a lot of work that we still have left to do in America, around the world, as Enrica said. However, we've also come a long way. We've also come a real long way. So I think about, I'll sit on my porch and I'm having my crass, sex talk with my neighbors because I'm me and I'm an idiot. But I even think as I sit with my neighbor who is now in his early 70s, what it must look like to see two younger men just openly talking about that in the street, versus when he was growing up in the late 60s, early 70s, when he was losing friends to AIDS in the 80s. And here we are, I'm making douche jokes, and sipping rosé. So that's where Somnus came from, like it's both with the mutant metaphor and the literal fact that he's gay. We wanted to create a character who, it wasn't a gay suffering character. He didn't live a bad life, but he lived a compromised life, as a lot of people do. And because of what's going on in Krakoa now, when you have a character like Akihiro, who, just does what he wants, to hell with the rules, well, he's not going to stand for that anymore. And so with Krakoa and the resurrection protocols, we had a chance to acknowledge this and then give some wish fulfillment to that generation and let them come back and live in their prime and have a second chance to live uncompromised. So for me, this is about tipping a hat and showing some love and honoring the folks that came before us. It's something that's always been really important to me on the creative side. I was saying, I want to spotlight people like Eric. I want to spotlight people like Klaus Janson, who've been in the game for a long time. Same thing I did on Wonder Woman. I wanted to do an issue with Jan Duursema because everybody always talks about, more women in comics. And yes, of course we need more. But I also want to acknowledge folks that have been here kicking ass the whole time. So that's where that character Somnus came from in a metatextual way, because this is something that's been on my mind for a long time. We have steps to take, but I want to show some love to folks who've been in the fight since even before I was born.
It's beautifully designed character too.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
Yeah, I guess my work was made very easy. I got to work from the full script, and I mean, by now I guess you all have read the story. It is super emotionally charged, and it is very inspiring. So I kind of visualize him as I read the script, even if there wasn't a lot of visual description. I got a feel for what he would look like right away from just imagining this dreamy man of his dreams. And also I think in some level everything we're talking about, this moment in history and everything that is happening is kind of charged into this design for me. I can't explain it rationally. It's something I made and it works because it's also like the first sketch I did. I only had to change the first mask design I did, but everything else is everyone liked what I did from the start. So it's one of those very rare occasions where you sketch something and it's right from the start.
I almost ended my relationship by giving him bare feet, but my boyfriend got over it. That's a sensitive topic for him. But he found a way to still be supportive while never looking directly at the design. So that's exciting.
Well, thank you both for this new character. And I'm excited to see what comes with him next year, supposedly.
You'll be seeing him again. I can't tease too much. Plus, this is a DC podcast.
Right.
But
I am known for derailing to Marvel. I apologize.
But unless I get struck by lightning, probably heat lightning, the way today's going, you'll be seeing Somnus again. It is my sincere hope that we can keep him in the mix and keep him as someone who's being used in the Krakoan era. Because look, I mean, I had made a joke in the chat, but like the story of me before has been creating a ton of queer characters that appear in my books and then they just disappear, you know, like Firebrand, who's my favorite character that I made while I was at DC. What more of an Orlando character? She has to get into a fight every day or she dies. So we're making a dedicated push to lock Somnus in, and that comes through appearing in other books. And you'll be seeing some stuff in 2022.
Actually, at the very last minute, as we were finishing up the stories, the editor asked me to do Somnus's title, like title design. They're like, because there's a point where he introduces his new name. And the editor was like, can you make it a nice title design? And I was like, what the heck? So I had to sit with the colors and look at it and try to give it kind of a dreamy effect. But that was like, okay, gotta find some point of inspiration here. But his costume is so pretty. So.
And you did an amazing job. There's nothing as a comics nerd that I like more than a nice logo drop and lettering. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for that and like, you know, dot shading, the things that nobody cares about except me.
Also, you scripted my first snicked sound effect. When
beautiful. Yes, that's
same week I got to letter a snicked, and then in the Demon Days series, I got to do my first BAMF. So it's like, okay, I can die.
That's some major cred right there.
Come to Wonder Woman. We'll do your first hola. And well, I think that's the hat trick.
Yes, that would be.
Okay, so completely shifting gears for our other questions, we like to ask the guests who come on a very silly question that has gone some interesting places, certainly in the last edition of this Pride special it did, which is, what is your most ridiculous DC Comics hill you will die on?
And you can't say Batman eats pussy because we already did that.
Though we may ask about it.
The hill I will die on, I don't know if it's controversial or not, but in my mind, Batman Bruce Wayne is the least interesting person in Gotham.
We agree.
It's just fascinating to me when they ever do a Batman movie and they center it on Bruce Wayne and there's like very little else, maybe Alfred. And I'm like, what's interesting here? Because he's kind of like one of those blades you see in Forge and Fire. You bend him one way or another way, he always comes back to true, right? You're always going to have the same character because he's the spoke for the wheel. Meanwhile, you've got Cass being the best fighter, Jason being the less restrained, Dick is the best superhero, and because he knows everyone, can interact with everyone, and Tim is the best detective. You're going to have everyone being better than him, as well as having all the villains being more enhanced aspects of all of the things that Batman's not dealing with. And so all of these other characters, they can go in so many different directions and you're excited to see where they're gonna go, but Bruce Wayne's always gonna be Bruce Wayne. No matter how wild they take his character, he can always snap back to being the same guy.
This is an opinion we've long espoused on this podcast, on this Batman podcast. Also, love the Forge and Fire reference.
Mine is not ridiculous. It is very serious, and it is on topic with this episode. For me, Team Con is canon. Robin and Superboy have been dating since Young Justice years. They just didn't tell anyone for some reason. That everyone has to take their time. We don't judge, but I think that is canon, and we just have been robbed of seeing it on panel.
Yeah, we'll die on that hill with you.
Gosh, we are eagerly following the Tim story in Batman Urban Legends right now.
Fingers crossed.
I'm okay. So like we are over here. We are in the same boat, Luciano. if it happens, we'll invite you back to talk about it. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I guess my take, I'm not sure how interesting my take is, but I think we've seen enough of Joker it's very cool and it's very interesting. Hey, it's crazy. Oh, it's so dangerous. Ooh. Yes, it's true. Very cool. I think that we can make more space for other villains or just other stories, new villains, new stories, new things. And we definitely need more Poison Ivy.
The three of you have basically said our opinions on this podcast.
Yes.
That's what we say weekly.
We're just over
On
here
the show-
vibing.
On the Joker front, I love how for the newer generations, Harley stopped being Joker's girlfriend, and the Joker is more Harley's ex now.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, I agree. I
He
was actually
should
thinking
be.
about that. I'm very happy that Harley has been kind of like removed from the shadow of the Joker, because like so many other of the characters in the Gotham and DC atmosphere in general, it's just there's a lot more that we can play with, and I think that I love classic comics. I love the like good old school stuff, yes, but I also like that we get to see the characters in a bit less stereotypical way, which still means that they're, you know, the same characters, are still faithful to like the vision of the character and that, but I think we can, you know, push a little in a slightly different direction. It's all simply make space for things that are naturally made to be slightly different.
100%.
Well, thank you all so much for your contributions to DC Pride and then, of course, Marvel Pride as well. Thank you so much for your work. It was fantastic. Where can our listeners find you on social media? And do you have any projects coming up that they can look forward to?
I have a ton. It's going to take too long listing them all. Find me on social media at the Steve Orlando on Twitter, and also the Steve Orlando on Instagram. It's kind of like a little Venn diagram. If you want more comics and less me talking about exercise and being thirsty, Twitter. If you want the reverse, come to Instagram, but you will get both on both. What's coming up? There's a lot coming up. I mean, you will see me at Marvel again. Well, first of all, Extreme Carnage in starting like this summer, a big summer blockbuster event with all the symbiotes. I'm continuing my work on Toxin there, but August is a really big month. I'm launching at IDW King Grimlock, which is like Grimlock the Barbarian, a book that I did not think I would get approved for, and here we are. It's 5 issues of him fighting dragons and wizards and being everybody's favorite king of the Dinobots. So I'm very excited about that. And August is also when Steve Fox and I launch Rainbow Bridge, the first YA book from Aftershock. It's about getting one last chance for an adventure with a lost pet. What if the Rainbow Bridge was the Bifrost from Thor? Very excited about that. And because things don't stop, quickly I'll say September from Aftershock, Search for Who, a Jewish-Chinese action thriller that I did not think was possible. And then the co-writer John Sway and I found out there's actually a rich history of Chinese and Jewish folks living together in China. And then in October, the polar opposite of Rainbow Bridge, Party and Pray, from me and Steve Fox. It is a 80s style LGBTQ plus slasher book, sure to generate some opinions. That's an OGN out in October.
That's exciting. TJ and I love a slasher, so we're here for it.
It's basically like what if Peter Thiel was an Elizabeth Bathory type. So it's it's going to be pretty wild. And cover, by the way, amazing cover that we surprised had colored by Jose Villarrubia out of nowhere. So speaking of honoring folks that have been in the game and being queer for a long time, was super excited to have him be part of that book. Jose is an icon.
You can find me on Twitter, comment Ari, COMMENTAIRY. And from my Twitter, that's where you can find my portfolio. That's pretty much my only social media existence, but yeah, you'll find me there. And if anyone ever has questions about lettering and stuff, you can just DM me.
I am Luciano Vecchio on Twitter, Luciano Vecchio Art on Instagram, Art of Luciano Vecchio on Facebook, but I post the same thing everywhere. So you'll find me there. And I am currently working on the Champions book for Marvel with writer Danny Lore. So that's where you will see more of my work right now.
You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Eren Angiolini. I have recently made sure that all my socials have the same handle because it was getting a bit out of control. Or you can check out my portfolio / online shop at www.enricaangiolini.com. I have so things coming out is Justice League Last Ride issue 3, which should be out beginning of the month. I'm very, very excited because we get to share more and more of the plot, and you get to see a lot of very cool and also very tough to color fight scenes. But it's wonderful. I'm having an absolutely great time coloring this book, and we're actually, of course, quite ahead in the creation. So we're actually nearly finishing, and I'm already very sad because it's done already. But I hope I will have more cool DC news soon to reveal. And then the other thing that I can plug, because everything else I think is not been announced yet, but I color a webcomic on Webtoons called Rob, which is a fantasy, but not so fantasy, kind of post-apocalyptic rank punk, and so there's lots of very weird ways to describe it, take on the Robin Hood tale, and we're actually closing in on the end of the story. There's just a few, like 3 or 4 more chapters to go. So if you are interested, you have quite a lot of stuff to read, and if you have some time, hop on Webtoons and check Rob, and I hope you'll enjoy that.
I love me some Webtoons,
me
so you got me.
I just remembered something I wanted to promo, and that's the Crush and Lobo series over at DC. That one's really, really fun. I never really get to letter that wildly, but the editor's always been encouraging of it, and the script's really great. So I hope people check it out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This has been so fun getting to hear all your opinions and takes on everything.
Thank you one more time for coming. And thank you again for your contributions to this amazing anthology. And like I said, hopefully, maybe we'll be chatting next year.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
We want to just do a special thank you to the editors of this amazing Pride collection:
Jessica Chen,
Chris Conroy,
Diego Lopez,
Michael McAllister,
Andrea Shea,
Amadea Totoro.
Thank you all so much for your hard work.
Yes, thank you everyone who was involved in this behind the scenes and on the page.